What if some of the greatest sci-fi stories were never allowed to finish? What if entire universes, rich, complex, unforgettable, were simply erased before their biggest revelations? These shows didn't fail. They were cut off. And the deeper you look, the more it feels intentional. Today, we're uncovering 10 brilliant sci-fi series like Firefly and the OA that were canceled too soon and why their stories might not be over yet. Number 10. Farscape, 1999. What happens when a show gets canceled right before its biggest moment, and fans refuse to let it die? Farscape wasn't just another sci-fi series, it was chaos, creativity, and character-driven storytelling pushed to the absolute edge. At a time when most space operas played it safe, this show leaned into the bizarre, blending practical effects, puppetry, and deeply emotional arcs into something that felt completely unpredictable. The story followed an astronaut flung across the universe into a ship full of fugitives. But what made Farscape unforgettable wasn't the premise, it was the relationships. These characters argued, evolved, broke, and rebuilt themselves in ways that felt raw and real. Over 4 seasons, it quietly built one of the most layered sci-fi narratives of its time. Then, without warning, it was canceled. No proper ending, no resolution, just a story cut off mid-flight. Fans were furious and loud. Their backlash was so intense that it forced the creation of a follow-up miniseries, The Peacekeeper Wars, to tie up loose ends. But even that felt like a rushed conclusion to something that deserved more space to breathe. And that's the real reason it belongs here. Because Farscape proved something rare. When a world is this rich, when characters feel this alive, cancellation doesn't end the story. It freezes it, waiting, unfinished, and maybe still ready to continue. Number 9. Altered Carbon, 2018. Imagine a world where death isn't the end. It's just a transfer. Where your body is replaceable, your identity is digital, and power belongs to those who can afford to live forever. That's the unsettling reality Altered Carbon dropped viewers into, and from the very first episode, it felt like stepping into a future that was dangerously possible. Built on classic cyberpunk foundations, the show explored a society where consciousness could be uploaded and downloaded into new bodies, turning life itself into a commodity. Season 1 was praised for its dense world-building, striking visuals, and a noir-style mystery that pulled audiences deep into its morally complex universe. But then came the shift. Season 2 changed its lead and tone, and while it still expanded the world, it lost some of the gritty edge that made it so compelling. Not long after, Netflix pulled the plug. Just like that, a universe filled with endless possibilities stopped evolving. And that's what makes its cancellation so frustrating. Because Altered Carbon wasn't running out of ideas, it was just getting started. The themes of immortality, inequality, and identity were far from fully explored. It had the potential to grow into one of the defining sci-fi epics of its era. Instead, it became something else. A glimpse of a future we were never allowed to fully see. Number 8. The Crossing, 2018. Imagine a world where refugees from the future arrive in our time, tired, desperate, and running from a dystopian nightmare. That's the premise of The Crossing, a show that combined time travel, political intrigue, and human drama into a thought-provoking narrative. Set in a small town, the story followed the arrival of people who claimed to be fleeing a future America ravaged by war and societal collapse. The show had the potential to dive deep into themes of identity, survival, and the choices that create a dystopian future. The Crossing was a slow burn, but it found its rhythm, offering a unique mix of mystery and emotional depth. The refugee storyline resonated deeply, especially in a time when global migration was a hot-button issue. The dynamics between the present-day characters and the mysterious newcomers brought fresh tension. And as the show began to reveal its complex layers, it felt like it was just scratching the surface of something bigger. But after just 1 season, ABC canceled it, leaving a cliffhanger that demanded answers. Viewers were left wondering, what could have been explored in future seasons? how the time travel element would unfold, how the characters would develop, and whether humanity could change its fate. What makes The Crossing so frustrating is its untapped potential. It started strong, set up a fascinating narrative, and then vanished. Fans continue to hope for a revival or resolution. After all, a show that asks, "Can we escape our future?" deserves a second chance to explore the question fully. Number 7. 1899, 2022. Nothing about this show made sense, and that was exactly the point. 189. 9 began as a slow-burning mystery aboard a ship crossing the Atlantic, but within moments, it became something far stranger. Passengers spoke different languages. Reality shifted without warning, and every answer only led to a deeper, more unsettling question. Created by the minds behind Dark, this series was designed as a layered puzzle, carefully constructed to unfold over multiple seasons. Every symbol, every silence, every strange coincidence felt intentional, as if the audience was being invited to decode something far bigger than the story itself. Then, just as the illusion began to crack, it ended. Cancelled after one season. What makes this cancellation hit harder than most is that 1899 wasn't just incomplete, it was structured to be incomplete. The first season was only the beginning of a much larger narrative, and fans were left staring at a cliffhanger that redefined everything they thought they understood. And that's the tragedy here. Because 1899 didn't fail, it was interrupted. It was a story built like a maze, and viewers were pulled out before reaching the center. And when a show creates that level of intrigue, cutting it short doesn't erase it. It only makes people want the truth even more. Number 6. Almost Human, 2013. What if the future wasn't broken? Just emotionally disconnected? Almost Human opens with a world where technology has outpaced humanity and then quietly asks a more unsettling question. What happens when machines start understanding people better than people do? Set in a near-future police force, the show pairs a hardened detective with an android partner designed to feel emotion. On paper, it sounds like a standard buddy cop formula. But within minutes, it becomes something deeper. The android isn't just a tool, he's curious, empathetic, sometimes even more human than the man beside him. That contrast is where the show found its power. Each case peeled back layers of a society drowning in advanced technology, where crime evolved faster than morality. But the real story wasn't the crimes, it was the relationship. The tension between logic and feeling, control and vulnerability, man and machine. Then came the problem. Episodes aired out of order. The tone became inconsistent. And despite strong visuals and growing audience interest, the network pulled the plug after just one season. And that's what makes it frustrating. Because Almost Human wasn't fully realized, it was mismanaged. Its world was rich, its concept timeless, and its emotional core just beginning to take shape. In another timeline, this could have been a defining cyberpunk series. Instead, it became something else entirely, a glimpse of what we almost had. Number 5. Kyle XY, 2006. What if you were born without a past, without even the most basic human instincts, yet had the potential to change the future? Kyle XY introduced viewers to the mysterious Kyle, a teenage boy with no memory, no belly button, and extraordinary abilities that set him apart from everyone around him. As Kyle tried to adapt to life in suburban America, the show blended mystery, science fiction, and teen drama into an engaging coming-of-age story, full of puzzles, family dynamics, and an eerie sense of something much bigger at play. The central question was compelling. Who or what was Kyle? With every episode, the show peeled back layers of Kyle's origins, hinting at a deeper conspiracy involving genetic manipulation and government experimentation. Meanwhile, Kyle's evolving relationships with the Traeger family and his struggle to understand what it meant to be human made him a deeply relatable character, despite his otherworldly qualities. However, After 3 seasons of strong storytelling, Kyle XY was canceled, leaving many of its mysteries unresolved. The show had set up the perfect springboard for a bigger, more complex narrative, exploring Kyle's origins, the nature of his abilities, and what would happen next in his battle with those who created him. What makes the cancellation so painful is that the show had barely scratched the surface of its potential. With its strong blend of sci-fi and heartfelt drama, Kyle XY had the power to evolve into a landmark series. Instead, it ended too soon, leaving fans to wonder what could have been. Number 4. The Prisoner, 2009. What if your mind was trapped in a village of perpetual surveillance, where nothing is what it seems? That's the premise of The Prisoner, a remake of the 1960s cult classic that reimagined the story for the 21st century. The original Prisoner left an indelible mark on pop culture with its surreal storytelling and existential questions about identity and freedom. The 2009 remake was an ambitious attempt to update this story for a new generation, with Jim Caviezel as the mysterious Number 6, fighting against the oppressive system of a high-tech, mind-manipulating society. Despite its strong performances and thought-provoking narrative, the series was canceled after just 1 season, leaving the deep philosophical questions unresolved. While it didn't reach the level of its predecessor, The Modern Prisoner held a unique place in the sci-fi landscape, with a narrative full of twists and psychological depth. The show's exploration of isolation, control, and free will could have continued to push boundaries. With more time, it could have developed into a modern psychological thriller in the vein of Westworld, a show that questioned our own understanding of the world we live in. Number 3. The OA 2016. Some shows entertain you, some confuse you. And then, there are the rare ones that seem to reach through the screen and dare you to believe in something larger than logic. The OA was that kind of show. It arrived with mystery, but what made it unforgettable was its refusal to behave like ordinary television. Every episode felt like a secret being told in whispers, as if the series knew most viewers would not fully understand it until it was gone. At the center was Prairie Johnson, a young woman who returns after years of disappearance with a new name, a strange story, and a vision that sounded impossible. What followed was not just science fiction and not just supernatural drama. It was a deeply unusual fusion of trauma, alternate dimensions, faith, memory, and human connection. The show took enormous creative risks, and that was exactly why its fans loved it so fiercely. Then came the second season, and instead of getting smaller or safer, the OA became even bolder. It opened up its mythology, sharpened its emotional core, and ended on one of the most shocking, conversation-starting twists in recent streaming history. It felt less like a cliffhanger and more like a door being kicked open into something radically new. And then, Netflix shut that door. That cancellation still stings, because the OA did not feel finished in any emotional or structural sense. It felt like a story that was just beginning to reveal what it truly was. Some canceled shows leave viewers disappointed. The OA left them obsessed. And that is exactly why it deserves a comeback, because unfinished mystery can fade, but unfinished brilliance becomes legend. Number 2. Terra Nova, 2011. Imagine a world where humanity gets a second chance, not on a new planet, but by traveling back in time to prehistoric Earth. Terra Nova was a thrilling concept that promised a mix of Jurassic Park meets Lost, a family-friendly sci-fi adventure filled with dinosaurs, time travel, and the moral dilemmas of starting over in a dangerous, primordial world. It was bold, ambitious, and visually stunning. The first season brought viewers into a lush, beautifully rendered world where human settlers built a new civilization alongside the most dangerous creatures to ever walk the earth. But, despite its immense potential and high production value, Terra Nova was canceled after just 1 season. The show had a massive budget and was praised for its spectacular visual effects, but it struggled with inconsistent writing and a slow-paced narrative. Still, the show's premise alone carried so much untapped potential. As the settlers of Terra Nova tried to balance the wonders of a fresh start with the horrors of prehistory, the series had the chance to explore deep questions about humanity's impact on the planet, ethical dilemmas about survival, and the possibility of changing history. The cancellation of Terra Nova left fans with more questions than answers. What could the show have become if given a chance to evolve? Could it have tackled more complex, darker themes as its story progressed? The possibilities seemed endless. Instead, it ended far too soon, cutting off what could have been a truly unique and thought-provoking saga in the world of sci-fi. Terra Nova deserved more time to dig deeper into its ambitious world and explore the consequences of humanity's desperate attempts to escape its mistakes. Number 1. Firefly 2002. Some canceled shows are disappointing. Firefly became a wound the genre never fully recovered from. More than 2 decades later, people still talk about it with the kind of frustration usually reserved for stories that were not merely canceled, but robbed. And that is exactly what happened. This was not a show that slowly lost steam. It was a brilliant series cut down before it had the chance to become what many believe it was destined to be. Created by Joss Whedon, Firefly fused the language of a Western with the scale of science fiction, creating a universe that felt dusty, dangerous, funny, and painfully human. The setup was deceptively simple: a damaged crew aboard a transport ship taking odd jobs on the edges of civilized space. But what gave the show its power was not the premise, it was the chemistry. Every character felt distinct, lived in, and emotionally alive. The dialogue snapped. The tension simmered. Even quiet moments carried weight. Then Fox mishandled it. Episodes were aired out of order. The marketing was confused. The network never seemed to understand what kind of show it had. And after only one season, it was gone. That abrupt ending transformed Firefly from a promising series into a legend. Fans did not just miss it, they rallied around it. The demand became so loud that it eventually led to the film Serenity, but even that felt more like emergency closure than the full continuation the series deserved. And that is why Firefly remains the ultimate answer to this topic. It is not just a beloved canceled sci-fi show. It is the symbol of what happens when originality, character, and world-building collide with network failure. Some shows deserve another season. Firefly deserves the second life it was denied. Some sci-fi shows end. These did not. They were interrupted. That is why they still linger in the imagination, still spark debate, and still feel unfinished years later. The real tragedy is not that they were canceled. It is that their best ideas may have been waiting just ahead, and maybe that is why fans still refuse to let them go.